In this story, you will immerse yourself in the harsh daily life of a medieval reader of love poetry. Before you unfolds a mercilessly realistic picture filled with dirt, hunger, humiliation, and hopeless despair. There is no romance or noble feats here, only a painful struggle for survival, endlessly repeating itself in a ruthless cycle of daily routine. You will experience every step of the hero's miserable existence and reflect on how cruel and absurd the life of those who sold beautiful illusions in a world devoid of beauty could be. But before you settle in comfortably, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always exciting to see who has joined us. And now, get comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake up to the familiar sensation of damp straw digging sharply into your back. It takes several moments before the reality of your life returns. You are neither noble nor knight, merchant nor farmer. You are but a humble reader of love poetry, a tradesman of embellished lies, a spinner of pretty words no one truly believes. Above your head, dawn struggles weakly through the gaps in your poorly thatched roof, each hole carefully placed by neglect rather than skill. The rain has already soaked through during the night, dripping onto your face, creating a muddy trickle that merges seamlessly with the sweat and dirt already caked on your skin. With a weary sigh, you wipe the brownish water from your forehead, smearing grime over your eyelids. Your home, if one could call it such, is no better than a shack, constructed from half-rotten timber and patches of mud. The air inside is thick, rancid with mildew, and worse. Rats scuttle shamelessly across the uneven dirt floor, searching for crumbs you long since stopped bothering to sweep. You watch them without disgust. By now, they feel like family. Rising is a tedious, painful affair. Your muscles ache from a night spent huddled in awkward positions, trying to avoid the leaks above and the bugs below. Your clothes cling to your skin, perpetually damp and perpetually foul smelling. The coarse wool tunic scratches mercilessly, yet it's the only clothing you possess. Washing it is out of the question. Dry clothes are a luxury meant for the wealthy, or at least those slightly luckier than you. As you sit up, dizziness grips you. Hunger gnaws sharply at your insides, reminding you that yesterday's stale crust of bread barely counted as nourishment. A jug near your sleeping place holds what remains of water collected from yesterday's rain, a murky, gritty mixture. You drink anyway, grimacing at the earthy taste, but grateful for the temporary easing of your parched throat. Outside your shack, the sounds of the medieval city waking echo grimly. The bell tolls ominously in the distance, marking the beginning of another day filled with toil, misery, and relentless hardship. You stand, joints creaking audibly, feeling prematurely old, though you're hardly past your youth. You shuffle toward the warped wooden door, forcing it open after several tries. Moisture has swollen the wood, and it sticks stubbornly. Stepping onto the muddy street, your foot instantly sinks into ankle-deep filth. The road itself is a river of sludge, a hideous blend of dirt, animal dung, rotting food scraps, and waste carelessly flung from upper windows. The air outside is worse than within your shack, a pungent bouquet of urine, rotting garbage, and animal carcasses. You attempt to draw a deep breath but gag instead, coughing violently. Around you, others shuffle along with hollow gazes, their eyes dulled by hunger, illness, or despair. A young woman clutching an infant wrapped in ragged cloth passes by, her face etched deeply with lines far beyond her age. Her glance meets yours briefly, conveying not camaraderie, but rather shared exhaustion and resignation. You stumble forward through the muck, squelching loudly with each step. Your battered shoes, once sturdy leather, now are barely held together with twine and desperate hope. As you navigate the narrow lanes toward the market square, you must dodge splashes from carts pulled by oxen, their drivers indifferent to whom they drench with mud and filth. At one corner, you witness a common scene, guards berating a thin, bedraggled man caught stealing a handful of vegetables. Their armored fists crash mercilessly against his thin frame, sending him sprawling into the muck, sobbing and pleading. Passers-by barely pause, already numbed to such cruelty. You avert your gaze, knowing it could easily be you tomorrow. After all, poetry hardly fills your stomach, and desperation is always close. In another street, you pass by the open door of a butcher's shop, its window displaying half rotted meat buzzing with flies. Even as your stomach growls in protest, you know such meat is beyond your reach. The butcher eyes you suspiciously, aware you lack coin or status. Your trade, while occasionally providing scraps from patrons pleased with your readings, never ensures regular sustenance. Most often, the small rewards earned must be surrendered immediately in exchange for some wretched meal that might carry you another day. Near the end of the street, a priest shouts sermons of eternal damnation to those who pass by without donating to the church's coffers. You keep your head lowered, knowing your shabby appearance makes you an easy target. Your soul, he proclaims, is surely damned already, mired as you are in earthly sins, though the only sin you feel guilty of is surviving each day in such squalor. Finally, your destination emerges, the marketplace. Its colorful stalls and vibrant banners contrast painfully with the bleakness of your existence, mocking your poverty. Traders shout loudly, hawking goods you can neither afford nor barter for. Merchants display vibrant fabrics, aromatic spices, fresh fruits, luxuries beyond your reach or even your imagination. Your spot, a makeshift stage of wooden crates at the market's edge, awaits. The wet crates wobble treacherously beneath your feet as you climb atop them, feeling absurdly small and vulnerable. Your voice, trained by years of practice, rises above the cacophony with a familiar monotone, reciting verses of love you no longer believe in. Today's poem is about fair maidens with golden hair, noble knights, and forbidden passions. Empty stories you've repeated so many times they've lost all meaning. People glance your way briefly before moving on, indifferent or hostile. A passing drunkard jeers loudly, flinging a rotten apple core in your direction. It narrowly misses your face, splattering instead against your already filthy clothing. You endure it without reaction, your dignity long since eroded by countless similar humiliations. Occasionally, a passing noble tosses a coin your way, less from appreciation than from disdainful pity, and never without ensuring it lands in the deepest puddle possible, forcing you to retrieve it like an animal. Today, no coin comes. Hours pass, each minute stretching endlessly. Hunger intensifies, dizziness returns, yet you continue to recite mechanically, a trained automaton desperate only to survive another day. Eventually, evening shadows creep across the marketplace, signaling the end of your pitiful performance. You step down unsteadily, legs numb from hours standing on slippery crates, voice raw and strained, with nothing to show for your efforts except a few more stains and increased despair. You begin your weary trek back toward the squalid shelter you reluctantly call home. The city's sights, sounds, and odors blur together in your exhaustion, indistinguishable in their cruelty. As night falls, you push open your swollen door again, the darkness inside welcoming and oppressive. Collapsing onto the straw mat, still damp from the morning's rains, you close your eyes. Tomorrow will be the same. Equally harsh, equally filthy, equally hopeless. You drift into fitful sleep, haunted not by dreams, but by the certainty that your life, a bleak joke you no longer find amusing, will repeat itself endlessly. An eternal cycle of mud, misery, and meaningless verse. When you wake the next morning, the grim predictability of your existence greets you like an old, unwelcome acquaintance. Sleep has granted you neither comfort nor escape, only stiffness and renewed awareness of how sore and exhausted you are. Your back aches from the uneven straw mattress, and an angry red rash now spreads across your arms from dampness and insect bites. With an effort, you drag yourself upright, brushing away a rat that has curled warmly beside your leg. It seems even the vermin pity you now. Outside, another gray dawn stretches bleakly over your city, draping the rooftops in a mantle of fog and melancholy. The persistent drizzle continues unabated, turning streets into rivers of brownish slime. You groan softly as you consider the route you must take, once again, toward the marketplace, a walk that daily tests your patience, endurance, and dignity. Stepping from your hovel, your foot instantly sinks into a familiar, revolting squelch. The mud has deepened overnight, and the foulness of yesterday has multiplied exponentially. You stare down at your shoe, already losing its shape in the thickening ooze. With grim determination, you take another step forward, each movement painfully deliberate, every stride threatening to pull your tattered shoes off your feet entirely. As you move along the alleyway, the stench intensifies. Human waste, animal excrement, rotting carcasses, and vegetable scraps combine into a symphony of decay. It's a scent so powerful it could wake the dead, though perhaps mercifully it hasn't yet killed you. Passing by tightly packed homes, you hear the muffled sounds of morning quarrels drifting from behind thin wooden walls. Husbands shouting angrily at wives, children wailing, dogs barking. A shrill cry comes from a second floor window, a woman dumping the contents of a chamber pot directly onto the street below, narrowly missing your head. You dodge instinctively, slipping awkwardly on the slick surface beneath your feet, and nearly fall face first into a particularly vile puddle. Barely regaining balance, you notice a few street urchins laughing hysterically at your misfortune. Their gaunt faces and filthy clothing remind you that you have little right to feel superior, even to them. Ignoring their jeers, you push onward, humiliation coiling coldly in your chest. Further down, the street widens slightly, becoming a broader avenue crowded with people. You merge reluctantly into this human tide, painfully aware of your ragged appearance amidst townsfolk, merchants, and tradespeople moving purposefully toward their daily labors. Their occasional glances of disdain burn into your skin, each one a fresh, silent insult to your impoverished state and absurd occupation. A pair of armored city guards pushes roughly through the crowd, asserting their dominance with arrogance. One guard shoves you violently aside, sending you stumbling into a puddle of thick, gelatinous mud. You rise slowly, carefully, brushing the foulness from your sleeves. The guards laugh heartily, pleased with the entertainment your humiliation provides. You keep your eyes lowered, knowing protest will only invite greater pain. Nearby, a small group has gathered around something happening at the roadside. Curiosity overcoming your better judgment, you approach cautiously. You see a man on his knees, begging loudly and desperately. Beside him, a loaf of bread lies half submerged in filth, clearly stolen and just as quickly reclaimed by the baker, whose red faced anger makes him appear ready to strike the beggar down. The crowd murmurs coldly, their sympathy muted by their own suffering. The beggar pleads for mercy, claiming starvation, desperation, and children at home. None of it matters. The baker's response is swift and brutal, a sharp kick to the man's ribs, accompanied by a volley of curses. The crowd disperses quickly, as if afraid poverty might be contagious. You move on too, shaken by the reminder of how perilously thin the line separating you from that man's fate truly is. The drizzle thickens into heavier rain, soaking your clothing thoroughly. The wet wool grows heavier with each step, clinging uncomfortably to your skin, chilling you to the bone. Your teeth begin to chatter and your limbs grow numb, yet there's nothing to be done but continue onward. At last, you reach a narrow wooden bridge spanning a filthy canal. The sluggish water below is choked with debris, animal bones, rotten vegetables, and bloated rats drift lazily past. You pause briefly, gripping the railing and wondering, not for the first time, how tempting it would be to simply tumble in and let the current carry you away from all this misery. But even that, you know, would bring no real escape. As if sensing your thoughts, a cart laden with manure barrels across the bridge, forcing you to flatten yourself against the railing. It passes just inches from your face, the smell overwhelming, the wheels spraying a cascade of filth over your already drenched form. The cart driver shouts at you angrily, blaming your foolishness for his inconvenience. You endure his abuse silently, humiliation again your only defense. When the road finally opens onto the market square, your exhaustion has become absolute. The square teems with activity, despite the dreary weather. Merchants holler, their voices rising over each other, hawking their wares, fruits and vegetables, textiles and livestock, trinkets and meats. A crowd gathers at the pillory, where a thief stands bound, battered by rotten fruit, hurled gleefully from the jeering masses. You avert your gaze, knowing one day you may occupy the same shameful position. Your trade, poetry reading, is barely tolerated, and whispers of heresy or moral corruption often threaten anyone who makes their living through art and lies. You maneuver carefully through the throng, avoiding sharp elbows and careless feet. Finally, near the edge of the square, you reach your usual platform, a stack of crates still damp from yesterday's rains. As you begin climbing onto them, a small group nearby erupts into loud laughter, amused by your awkward efforts. Their derision stings, but you've grown accustomed to mockery. Atop your precarious stage, you stare blankly at the muddy faces around you. The townspeople, merchants, and beggars form a circle of indifference. You clear your throat, still raw from yesterday, and open your mouth to begin reciting. Yet as you speak the first overly familiar lines, another cart barrels past, wheels splashing a thick wave of filthy water high into the air, covering you from head to toe. Laughter rings around you, louder now, sharper. You wipe the muck from your eyes, coughing, spitting mud from your mouth, yet forcing your trembling voice to continue. Humiliation coils around you once more, tighter now, almost suffocating, yet still you persist. As your voice drones on mechanically, detached from the meaning of words that no longer matter, your only thought remains fixed. This humiliation is yours to bear, every day anew, an endless road from your shack to this market square, a cycle of filth, ridicule, and despair without beginning or end. Standing upon your makeshift platform, soaked to the bone, humiliated, and shivering beneath your sodden clothes, you prepare yourself to endure yet another day in your absurd occupation. The laughter and ridicule of the crowd ring mercilessly in your ears, a cruel harmony accompanying every line you recite. The rain eases slightly, not as a kindness, but merely to ensure your suffering continues without relief. Now, with filth dripping steadily from your hair and shoulders, you turn your eyes to the mass of indifferent faces before you, each one as joyless and empty as your own. The crowd, peasants, craftsmen, market sellers, beggars, forms a grim mosaic of humanity's hardship, united in their quiet disdain for you, the pitiful poet of hollow romances. You begin another poem, your voice hoarse from the relentless dampness, hunger, and hopelessness. Each verse is familiar, memorized to the point of nausea, but today every syllable feels like swallowing nails. The words ring hollow, their beauty long since evaporated, replaced by bitterness and quiet desperation. Yet you press on, the relentless demands of survival compelling you to sell your dignity for the faint hope of earning just enough coin to live another miserable day. The romance you describe, noble knights pledging eternal devotion, beautiful maidens swooning at gentle whispers, is now absurd beyond measure, given your own squalid existence. Still, you continue, fully aware of the absurdity, yet powerless to stop. Occasionally, passers-by pause briefly, more from curiosity or pity than genuine interest. A few drop stale bread or a pitiful copper coin, always with an air of detached superiority, as though bestowing charity upon a pathetic animal. You gather these scraps quickly, pocketing them with humility, grateful and ashamed simultaneously. As noon approaches, the crowd thins slightly, drifting off to attend more pressing tasks or simply seeking shelter from the oppressive gloom. You seize this brief respite to collapse onto the wet crates, your knees trembling, muscles quivering from hours of standing. Your stomach growls fiercely, reminding you that even these meager earnings may not buy you a decent meal. You survey your miserable collection of alms, two misshapen copper coins, and a stale, hardened crust of bread, and feel a hollow ache of disappointment. Suddenly, your gaze catches sight of a figure approaching, Lord Reynard, a minor nobleman notorious for his arrogance, cruelty, and frequent bouts of drunken misbehavior. You watch warily as he draws near, accompanied by a pair of bored-looking attendants. His silk doublet and fur-lined cloak contrast starkly against your own sodden rags. Reynard eyes you with obvious contempt, yet there is amusement lurking behind his sneer. "Ah," he exclaims theatrically, "is it not our beloved poet, spinning pretty lies for filthy pennies?" You lower your eyes respectfully, nodding meekly. "At your service, my lord." "Service indeed," Reynard mocks, raising his voice theatrically so that others may hear. "Tell me, poet, do you truly believe the nonsense you speak about love and honor, or are you merely the most convincing liar in town?" You feel heat rising in your cheeks, not from shame, which you long ago abandoned, but from suppressed resentment. Still, survival demands humility, so you respond softly. "I speak only the words my patrons desire to hear." Reynard laughs boisterously, a harsh, mocking sound. "Such honesty. Very well. Impress me, poet. Recite for me now, and perhaps I'll reward you more generously than these pathetic commoners." You swallow dryly, hating yourself for the eagerness with which you obey. Drawing a painful breath, you recite your best known poem, a ballad about forbidden romance and undying devotion, spoken in a trembling voice, thick with exhaustion. Reynard listens, half amused, half bored, until he suddenly interrupts. "Enough," he declares loudly. "Your voice grates upon my nerves, but still, you have entertained me. Here is your reward." He reaches into his velvet pouch, withdrawing a shining silver coin, a fortune beyond your usual earnings. Your heart skips a beat at the sight. Yet instead of handing it to you, he tosses the coin disdainfully into a puddle at your feet, splashing mud onto your already soaked clothing. "Fetch it, poet," Reynard commands cruelly, delighting in your obvious humiliation. His companions snicker behind their hands. You hesitate only briefly, dignity warring with desperation. Then, resigned to your fate, you kneel in the muddy pool, groping blindly for the coin. Mud and filthy water seep through your clothing as you feel your way around the bottom of the puddle. The nobleman burst into raucous laughter, thoroughly enjoying your degradation. The crowd, too, gathers once again, fascinated by your suffering. Finally, your fingers close around the coin and you lift it triumphantly, though it feels like defeat. Reynard claps sarcastically. Bravo, poet. A splendid performance. As the nobleman and his entourage walk away, still laughing at your expense, you climb painfully to your feet, slipping the muddy silver coin into your pocket. Though ashamed, you understand this humiliation has secured another day's survival. Such is the twisted logic of your life. Degradation exchanged willingly for survival. The marketplace empties further as the day grows late. You realize with dread that despite your exhaustion, you still have another obligation. A local cobbler had approached you yesterday, requesting a personalized love poem for his wife. It had seemed simple enough at the time, a straightforward exchange, words for food and drink. But now the task weighs heavily upon you, yet another painful reminder of your position as a servant to the desires of others. Gathering your meager earnings, you trudge through the mud choked streets toward the cobbler's modest workshop. Your stomach aches from hunger, your limbs tremble with exhaustion, yet the prospect of food compels you forward. Inside the cobbler's shop, you find the cobbler himself busy mending worn out shoes. His wife, a sour faced woman with piercing eyes and an eternally critical gaze, greets your arrival with open disdain. Well, she demands coldly, arms crossed tightly. Have you completed your pathetic verses yet? You bow slightly, handing her the damp parchment on which you've painstakingly written your poem. Her expression hardens further as she reads, her lips twisting into a sneer of contempt. This, she spits, is meant to flatter me. You dare mock me with this sentimental nonsense. Your heart sinks. The cobbler himself looks away, uncomfortable but unwilling to defend you. His wife rips the parchment in half, casting the fragments onto the filthy floor. You'll receive nothing from us for such insult, she hisses venomously. Your stomach twists painfully at the loss of promised food. You depart without protest, shoulders slumped, humiliation once more, your constant companion. Evening falls swiftly as you return homeward through streets growing darker and more dangerous. Shadows lengthen, cloaking the alleyways in oppressive gloom. You quicken your pace, aware that thieves and worse lurk unseen. Finally reaching your dilapidated shack, you enter and collapse wearily onto your straw mat, drained beyond description. Today has taught you once again that your art, these hollow verses, is not valued except as amusement or ridicule. Yet tomorrow, without fail, you must return to your crates, recite again, suffer more ridicule, swallow more humiliation. Your life is not poetry. It is a desperate act of survival, played out daily on a stage built from shame and necessity. You close your eyes, longing for sleep, knowing full well that tomorrow and every day thereafter will offer nothing better than the same endless struggle, repeated ad nauseum, a cycle you can neither escape nor change. Your weary eyes open slowly, greeting yet another bleak morning with a familiar feeling of dread. Daylight creeps reluctantly through the roof's countless gaps, revealing the grim conditions of your surroundings in stark clarity. Sleep has not refreshed you, it has only temporarily suspended your misery. Your back aches, your stomach churns emptily, and your hands tremble slightly, weakened by hunger and fatigue. Yet today, you recall bitterly, there is a task demanding completion. Your failed attempt to impress the cobbler's unpleasant wife. Yesterday has left you without promised food, intensifying the gnawing hunger that consumes you now. You must produce a new poem, one eloquent enough to appease her anger, restore the cobbler's favor, and secure sustenance, at least for one more miserable day. Slowly, you rise from your pathetic straw bed, brushing off the insects that cling stubbornly to your clothing. You shuffle toward the wooden table in the corner, an unsteady piece of furniture wobbling precariously each time you lean upon it. It holds a single cracked inkwell, a quill worn down nearly to the nub, and several scraps of parchment stained by water, dirt, and countless failed attempts at poetry. Seated, you stare at the blank parchment before you, aware that inspiration, once abundant, has long since deserted you. Yet necessity is a cruel muse. You must force your mind to conjure words, to weave a convincing tapestry of romance and affection, though your heart remains cold and your imagination barren. With painstaking slowness, you dip the quill into thickened, half dried ink and press its blunt tip onto the rough surface. Words come sluggishly at first, forced, empty, lifeless, but gradually they emerge, driven by desperation rather than genuine creativity. You describe beauty you've never seen, tenderness you've never known, devotions you've never experienced. Each stroke of your quill feels increasingly dishonest, a betrayal of your own miserable reality. Time passes slowly, punctuated by the dull ache in your stomach and the steady drip of rain through your leaking roof. Eventually, the lines begin to take shape, forming verses that may pass, at least superficially, for sincerity. Yet, just as you start to believe you may succeed in completing your task, a sudden gust of wind rushes through a large hole in the wall, extinguishing the single, flickering candle that illuminated your parchment. Cursing softly, you stumble in the darkness, feeling your way around the cramped shack in search of matches or flint. Your hands tremble more noticeably now, hunger making you weak and clumsy. After several frustrating attempts, the flame finally sparks to life once more, though smaller and even more fragile than before. You place it carefully on the edge of the table, praying it remains lit long enough to finish your miserable poem. But fate mocks your efforts relentlessly. As you lean forward, frantically scribbling another forced line of verse, your elbow brushes against the unsteady candle holder. The small flame tumbles, landing directly upon your nearly finished parchment. A flash of panic surges through you as you watch the flames spread swiftly across the dry paper. Desperately, you snatch at it, attempting to save your precious verses from destruction. In your haste, flames scorch your fingertips and palm, searing your skin and causing you to cry out sharply in pain. The poem, now engulfed, curls and blackens rapidly before your eyes, leaving behind nothing but smoldering ashes and despair. Your heart sinks heavily, defeat settling like a cold stone in your chest. All your work wasted in mere moments. You sit back heavily, staring numbly at the charred remnants scattered across the tabletop. The pain in your burned hand throbs angrily, a cruel reminder of your failure. But self pity serves no purpose. Despite your injured hand, your burning hunger, and your utter exhaustion, you must start again. Grimly, you take another scrap of parchment, smaller, dirtier, even less suitable, and place it carefully on the table. The quill shakes violently in your blistered fingers, making each stroke painfully difficult. You grit your teeth, forcing words to flow once more, even as tears of frustration and pain blur your vision. Hours drag on, each minute more grueling than the last. Your injured hand swells, your body weakens further, yet you persist, line after torturous line, emerging slowly, unevenly. The verses lose coherence, descending into desperate ramblings that barely resemble poetry. Still, you hope, foolishly perhaps, that your patron's standards might be low enough to accept your pitiful offering. Finally, as dusk darkens the shack once again, you lay down the quill, hands shaking violently, body aching beyond measure. The parchment before you is filled with messy, cramped script, hardly the elegant verses you once prided yourself upon. Yet it is done. Carefully, painfully, you gather your poem, hiding your injured hand beneath your tattered sleeve. You set off into the darkening streets, stumbling toward the cobbler's workshop once again. Rain falls steadily, soaking you to the skin within moments, chilling your injured hand until it throbs unbearably. The cobbler's wife greets you with predictable hostility, eyeing you suspiciously as you present your hastily scribbled poem. She reads silently, her lips tightening with obvious displeasure. Yet, perhaps recognizing your desperation or merely tiring of your pathetic persistence, she grudgingly nods. Better, she concedes bitterly, but barely tolerable. The cobbler, clearly relieved, hands you a small crust of stale bread and a wooden cup filled with bitter, sour wine. You accept the miserable offering gratefully, retreating quickly into the shadows to devour your meal hungrily, heedless of taste or dignity. For now, survival outweighs all else. Returning through the pitch black streets, you move warily, aware of the dangers lurking in the darkness, thieves, murderers, or worse. Each alley you pass whispers threats, shadows moving ominously in corners of your vision. Yet, miraculously, you reach your dilapidated home safely, collapsing immediately upon entering, too exhausted even to remove your sodden clothes. You stare upward, barely seeing the familiar holes in the roof above. Your hand throbs painfully. Hunger still gnaws at you despite your pitiful meal, and weariness consumes your very soul. Yet your greatest pain remains unseen. The lingering knowledge that your words, once your pride, are now reduced to meaningless scraps traded for moldy bread and sour wine. What, you wonder bitterly, is the true cost of inspiration? Is it dignity traded eagerly in desperation? Is it pain endured endlessly for mere survival? Or is it hope itself, extinguished gradually by relentless hardship? You close your eyes wearily, knowing that tomorrow's sunrise will bring no answers, only more hunger, more pain, more humiliation. You lie motionless, the gentle tapping of raindrops blending seamlessly with your own quiet despair, until finally, mercifully, sleep overtakes you once more. Sleep, fleeting and restless, abandons you long before dawn. Your eyes reluctantly open to an oppressive darkness punctuated only by the steady drip of water through your crumbling roof. The familiar scent of mold and damp straw fills your lungs, an unwelcome greeting to another day in your endless cycle of hardship. Pain instantly reminds you of yesterday's accident, your burned hand, swollen and throbbing fiercely, now pulses sharply beneath crude bandages fashioned from filthy rags. The ache has intensified overnight, spreading through your arm and leaving you feverish, shivering, despite the heavy humidity of your squalid shack. Carefully, you sit up, your body protesting every movement. Hunger returns with ruthless immediacy, gnawing at your empty stomach with relentless cruelty. Your small meal of stale bread and bitter wine from last night has done little to sustain you. Rather, it feels like a mockery, highlighting your perpetual deprivation. Slowly, cautiously, you rise to your feet, joints stiff and sore, muscles weak from malnutrition. Your clothes cling wetly to your body, still damp from yesterday's rain. The air inside your home feels heavier than ever, thickened with despair and resignation. Yet still, you understand clearly that remaining here accomplishes nothing. You must again face the cruel world beyond these rotting walls. As you step outside, darkness still holds the city in its grip, shadows stretching long and sinister across empty, mud slicked streets. The silence feels unnatural, broken occasionally by distant coughs, cries of infants, and the scurrying of rats. Unease prickles along your spine as you move carefully through alleys shrouded in gloom. Each shadow whispers threats, each sound stokes your fears. The city, always indifferent during daylight, feels openly hostile at night, concealing dangers you can neither predict nor control. Yet despite this dread, you press forward, driven solely by survival's uncompromising demand. Your injured hand throbs painfully, distracting you enough that you almost fail to notice the figure emerging suddenly from the shadows ahead, a large, ragged man blocking your path. Panic spikes through you as you realize, with grim certainty, that escape will be impossible. His eyes glitter darkly, filled with desperation that mirrors your own, but colder, deadlier. Hand over what you have, he growls, voice low and threatening. You raise your good hand defensively, pleading softly, I have nothing, only words, nothing more. The thief steps closer, sneering viciously, Words won't feed me coins now. With trembling fingers, you reach into your pocket, pulling out the single silver coin thrown to you mockingly by Lord Renard, the coin you retrieved from humiliation and mud. Painfully aware that surrendering it means losing days of sustenance, you hand it over with shaking hands. The thief snatches it eagerly, shoving you roughly aside, leaving you sprawled painfully upon the muddy street. You lie there for several moments, breathless, humiliation and despair mingling bitterly within your chest. Slowly, you rise again, brushing dirt from your already filthy clothes. This latest misfortune feels somehow fitting, another inevitable chapter in the miserable tale of your existence. By the time you reach the market square, the first dull rays of dawn begin creeping over rooftops, revealing the familiar sights: filthy stalls, garbage strewn ground, weary faces of townsfolk readying themselves for another day's struggle. You find your usual place atop crates, forcing yourself upright despite your exhaustion and injury. As the crowd gathers, your voice cracks weakly, rasping words emerging from your throat in a hoarse whisper. Yet, even in your weakened state, you continue, driven by habit, necessity, and stubborn pride. Some people stare, curious at your obvious suffering, but most remain indifferent, already numbed by their own hardships. Hours pass in a monotonous blur, reciting poetry you despise, receiving insults or pitifully small coins. Your injured hand throbs continuously, pain intensifying as the day grows long. Yet quitting means starvation, and your miserable life forces you onward, line after meaningless line. When evening falls at last, you climb down shakily from your crates, the day's earnings hardly enough for a morsel of stale bread. Your journey home begins anew, streets darkening rapidly, shadows once more cloaking familiar dangers. This time, however, you do not rush through the alleyways. Instead, you pause, reflecting bitterly upon your existence, observing the poverty and suffering surrounding you. Peering into windows lit dimly by candles, you glimpse lives equally desperate: families crowded into tiny rooms, children huddled around meager meals, elderly women sewing tirelessly to earn a few coppers. Your misery is not unique. Rather, it is universal, a thread binding all within this grim world. Lost in contemplation, you approach your shack, pausing briefly at its threshold. Moonlight reflects faintly in a nearby puddle, and your own weary face gazes back at you from the murky water. Pale, gaunt, hollow-eyed, it mocks you silently, a bitter reminder of all you've become, all you've lost. Stepping inside, you collapse heavily onto your straw mattress. Your hand pulses relentlessly, fever returning in earnest now, chills racking your weakened body. Thoughts swirl darkly through your mind, questioning the very nature of love, the beautiful illusion you've spent your life describing, yet never truly known. Is love, you wonder bitterly, merely another fiction, a pretty story told to distract from endless suffering? Is it simply another cruel jest, sold cheaply by men like you, peddlers of empty words meant only to deceive? Exhausted, weakened, and feverish, you find strange consolation in these grim reflections. Perhaps truth lies precisely here in the brutal honesty of recognizing love's falsity, its unattainability, its cruel deception. Accepting this harsh reality somehow feels freeing, releasing you from the burden of belief in romantic illusions. You close your eyes slowly, weariness overtaking you completely now. Tomorrow, you know, will bring only more pain, more humiliation, more hardship, a ceaseless repetition of every day before. Yet strangely, tonight, resignation brings comfort. Hope has betrayed you repeatedly. Embracing despair feels almost peaceful by comparison. Rain begins to fall again, soft pattering on your roof, lulling you into a fragile slumber. Darkness envelops you gently, comforting despite its coldness. Perhaps suffering, after all, is life's truest constant, the only reliable truth in this bleak existence. And in this realization, you find solace, the darkest consolation of all. Thus you sleep, battered and broken, accepting your fate with quiet surrender. Love, beauty, hope, all illusions, ephemeral dreams you no longer pursue. Instead, you embrace the grim, ugly reality of your daily survival. Tonight, at least, this truth is enough.